Have you ever asked yourself, does the person sitting next to me see green the same way I do? I mean, if I were inside their head, would green look like purple to me? Or would everything be just the same as I'm used to? Brain scientists answer that question with a resounding, not even maybe. When we're born, well, actually, it starts before that. The brain starts to wire itself to control the body and make sense of sensory input. Oh, sure, some stuff comes pre-installed, like crying and suckling, a desire to walk and curiosity, for instance. But humans have a whole lot of basic stuff they have to experience and learn. One of the reasons brain surgery is so hard and why they can't just deal with trauma by just removing the offending memories is because stuff is wired all over our brain in a mostly random way. Oh, there are some categories. We have a section of the brain reserved for visual input and one for language, for instance. But even that's not absolute. The section in humans for visual input is huge. And a person born blind may eventually start to wire the visual center to process audio input, giving them the impression of seeing sounds. If you were able to step inside the brain next to you, it isn't just that green wouldn't look anything like green to you, but nothing would be familiar. You would be in a confusing world of sensory input, emotions, memories, and other processes that would be nothing but a whirlwind of confusing stuff. Since we humans need to interact with other humans, we use language to create a commonality of meaning of the sensory input so that we can work together and understand the world in a common way. You perhaps have heard the term consensus reality, which is generally used to describe the way we have decided as a group to define the world around us. Because in actuality, there is no real reality like we humans expected. Our ability to perceive the world around us is woefully inaccurate due to the fact that we can only perceive a tiny slice of the information out there. So kids, besides wiring their brains to control their bodies and understand, categorize, and process the sensory input, they are also wiring their brains to a consensus reality. We may not conceive of green the same way as our neighbor, but we have come to a mutual understanding of what kind of sensory input gets the label green. Things like colors are pretty easy to define. Parents point to the light wavelength they have grown to describe as green and put the label green on it. And kids soon learn that that light wavelength group is green. And kids can learn pretty easily and pretty early what input is classified as green. Emotions are much more difficult. Emotions are things that happen inside your head. And while the kid may easily wire their brain to create a consistent internal perception of what anger or sorrow feel like, learning just what the word means is much harder. Parents cannot have the kids touch the sadness inside their brain and say, "This is sadness, honey." The best they can do is point to the response people have to sadness and put the label sad on it. So kids will look at how their mom acts when their dad says she is sad today. And then when they find themselves acting in the same way, they look at how they feel in the moment and will soon apply the word sad to the internal feeling as a separate thing than the sad depicting actions. Now, since not only do different people react differently to fear or disgust or sadness, but even the same person will react differently depending on the circumstances, it makes coming to a consensus reality about what it means to say someone is angry or frustrated much more difficult. Children will usually have a clear idea of what green actually means earlier than they are clear on what the words horror or relief or excitement mean relative to what's happening inside their brain. But emotions are represented by distinctive chemical signatures in the brain. While it may be confusing to kids what word goes along with those chemical reactions, they are consistent in each person and definable by neurologists, and in time, most people learn when they should put the label anger or disgust or frustration on what's going on inside their head. Even if how dad acts when he's frustrated looks a whole lot like how mom acts when she's angry. Things get more difficult with the word love. We tend to think of love as a single emotion, but it's not. There is no single chemical signature that indicates someone feels love, like there is for joy. It's much harder for kids to get any real consensus reality of just what combination of reactions belongs to that word, love. Now, despite this confusing complexity when it comes to associating a feeling with a word here, the concept is universal in humans. All languages have words for love. But love is actually a combination of multiple things that collect and interact to create a sustained feeling that we will put the label love on. Adoration, admiration, attraction, sexual desire, bonding, comfort, shared experiences. These are all usually part of the love mix for most people, though probably not all of it, and much, if not most, of which is processed in our subconscious. There's also cultural expectations of love. How mothers should feel about their kids and how siblings relate to each other. Varying expectations of loyalty, control, support, comfort between family members, between friends, and between lovers. And if that isn't enough complications, most of us also have subconscious reactions to someone who seems a lot like my father-mother, both good and bad things. Men with highly independent mothers often find themselves falling in love with independent women. Women with emotionally distant fathers fall for emotionally distant men. Well, y'all know the drill. So while there are commonalities on how and when people decide they are in love or that they love, each love is an individual journey full of random events, past experiences, and personality traits. Toss in some hardwired preferences in the case of romantic love, and you end up with something that looks similar to other loves, but is never exactly the same. That's why the whole idea of love spells existed throughout history and even today. Falling in love often seems like something totally outside of one's control and often, somehow, doesn't meet one's pre-assumptions. That's why they call it falling. We don't know why this bad boy, who is obviously bad for us, or that high-maintenance woman we cannot possibly afford to keep, pushes our buttons until we will ruin our lives just to be with them. Humans do persist in an attitude that emotions make sense. They do not come in contradictory combinations. They do not hugely overstep the situation, thus making witchcraft the only explanation for people doing really, really stupid things, and the only explanation they have for why they did it is that they are in love. Emotions are kind of like a computer. The brain reacts to certain input, which, by the way, might be in your imagination, and then dumps the chemicals needed to leave you feeling a certain way, which always happens to come with a desire to do certain things. That's their job, actually. It is the way your genes cause you to react certain ways to certain situations to help you survive. They're much older than the conscious mind, and so an animal does not need to understand that it's afraid. It simply feels bad and is eager to run or hide or appease. Anger makes us aggressive. Disgust makes us want to avoid or clean. Joy makes us want to smile or dance, and so on. Like a computer, the brain does not actually know if the action makes sense in the world outside the brain, or even if it's in conflict with your own desires, needs, or other feelings, including how you felt just half a second ago. It dumps the chemicals, we feel a certain way, we want to do certain things, and our conscious mind is on the hook to line it all up with circumstances and civilized behavior. While love is not itself an emotion, it comes in conjunction with a lot of emotions, most of which come with an extra kick due to the exceptionally high importance of love. Love is an intense concept for humans. Emotions are fleeting. They're designed to encourage you to take certain actions and are intended to go away when they are no longer needed. Love is persistent. A feeling of joy in the presence of my lover will wax and wane related to immediate events. But my feeling of love persists. Parents may be angry at their kids and perhaps refusing to even talk to them for something bad they've done. But the feeling of love will persist. I know many a divorced person who will say something like, "I would never get back together with the ex, just doesn't work. But he was my first love, and I will never, ever stop loving him." My cousin's younger sister has refused to talk to her since their father died. Years later, she still misses her and wishes she could make it work again. While love does not always last forever, it lasts much longer than just some fleeting emotion. It does tend to cling. It is really important to be loved. We all want to be loved. Being loved feels like the difference between living and dying. And in a primitive world, it might be. It's better to have someone who will take care of you, good care, devoted care when you are sick or hurt. Someone who will defend you against harm, even when it's dangerous. Someone who will share their food and their warmth and their help, even when they are hungry and cold and tired. And if we love and we are going that extra mile for another person, child, sister, lover, it becomes important to be loved in return. We begin to care a lot sometimes about how that person feels about us and what it means when they say they love us. You don't generally find people getting into fights over just what the word disgust or nostalgia means, but you might find them pulling out knives over what love means. We all, as individuals, have in our minds a clear definition of love. And as a rule, we are vested in that meaning too. The woman jaded to love won't hear of the concept of true love. The young person in love for the first time can't be convinced it might go wrong. or that any other love was ever so sweet. It matters to us how others define love, because we need to know just what they mean when they say they love us. But hearts have a mind of their own, and the words and the feelings of love often come wrapped in unexpected emotions and reactions, including our own. One of the things that's part of our cultural attitude toward love is that love is always good. If a person were to harm someone they claim to love, we are prone to declare that the person did not actually love. A man who beats his wife cannot love her because you do not harm the things you love. It doesn't make sense. This view kind of forgets that humans and their emotions don't always make sense. It doesn't make sense to hurt the people you love. The people you love and who love you are important and valuable. So obviously the only reason to hurt such a person is you don't really love them. My second husband would regularly say things like, "I always hurt the things I love," which he did. When he got angry, he had a tendency to destroy or damage things he cared about, including his people. To say that he didn't really love the things he hurt would be to say that he didn't love. The internal wounds that caused him to respond to anger by a form of self-harm wasn't the same thing as not loving. Things in his life were not in danger until he started to love them. Many of the native tribes in the Amazon are very aggressive and violent. There's a tribe called the Yanomamo who call themselves the fierce people. As is often the case with very warlike cultures, the cultural norm is violent, aggressive men and submissive women. Violence against women is nearly universal and not at all thought of in the culture as an evil that men should avoid. I read a book once by a woman anthropologist who had spent time with one of the tribes with her husband. She could only interact with the women, which her husband could not do at all. The women felt sorry for her. She obviously had never had a man who cared much for her. How did they know that? She had no scars from being beaten. A man never having enough emotion about anything concerning her to get violent could only mean one thing. He just didn't care. Does this mean that the Yanomamo, as a people, are incapable of love? No woman gets through her life without being beaten by her husband. The kinder men use their fists, others sticks and knives. Love is so personal and so important to us. We really have a strong desire to control what is meant by that word. We need it to mean what we need it to mean. And so we try to define love. But other humans just won't go along with our consensus reality. Yanomamo women have a view of love too. They look for their men to be passionate about them. The Yanomamo men don't just smack their women and go off raving. They also stand up and challenge any man in the tribe or out who may want to harm, rape, or kidnap their women, which any man will do if he can. Whether our expectation is for protection, submission, support, comfort, or whatever criteria we have in our love expectations, chances are we will never get exactly what we long for. Yanomamo men sometimes cower and let their women be taken away. Love is wonderful. Does any other thing feel so sweet? But it can also be dangerous. It is powerful and important And as a result, anything that feels like it threatens the loss of love can generate fast and deep fear, which can jump rapidly to anger, panic, or confusion, and then off to all manner of irrational actions. Perfect, unconditional love only comes from God. For the rest of us, we have no option but dealing with other humans off over there, with their brains wired all different from ours, and us with nothing to figure it all out except our inexact little words and the strength of our love, backed up by a burning desire for love. Given how complicated, uncertain, and dangerous love is, why would we ever do it if it wasn't breath itself? They say, love like you've never been hurt, which is to say, love like you've never loved. Because if you've loved, you've been hurt. How many parents do we know whose heart has been broken by their kids? How many friends forever mourning the loss of their very best buddy? Do we know anyone whose heart has not been wounded by their lover? Yet, we struggle continuously to define it and to capture it. Love is joy. Love is pain. Love is a river, a razor, a hunger, a rose growing in the snow. Blessed be.